You know, I can't help but feel like I've somehow been in this situation before. It's a little bit weird, kind of like deja vu. If you're new to the channel, Skull and Bones is a brand new game coming out by Ubisoft, where you get to play out the pirate life of your very own dreams. You get to sail ships, go around hunting down treasure, and, if you feel like it, sinking other ships in the process. In my own closed beta experience with Skull and Bones, I kinda did all this, but the difference is, in that time, I was limited to 6 hours, whereas in this time, in the open beta, I'm allowed to play for as long as I want. You know, for like 5 days, I think. I'm bad at math. And so, since I have no actual time limit and can try out the game as much as I want, I do just that. Sail the seas and go ahead and start my very own adventure in Skull and Bones, this time with no time limit. Which is nice. The adventure starts exactly how it used to back in the closed beta. You go ahead and sail your own ship that's not really your own, have to fight a bunch of British ships, and get some very nice shots in the meantime, and the enemy sinks you. Unfortunately, there's not much I can do. This is, a cutscene, which sucks. Once your ship sinks into the depths, you get to create your own character in the customization menu. And I'm not really that creative and end up creating the exact same character I did a few months ago. Again, I'm a lawyer, not a creative writer. I managed to get rescued on the high seas just like before and get my own little fishing ship. And once I find the old shipwreck of the ship I was supposed to protect, we go ahead and board that ship and find a bunch of different materials on board, such as a newspaper, some abandoned cannons that are just hanging out in the loose, some turned over cannons, and once I enter the ship's captain, I find the ship captain himself. But, he's kind of looking like the ship right now. Thankfully, on his desk is something I can actually use to my advantage in order to continue my pirate adventure, so my career doesn't sink just like the ship did. While this letter might look a little unassuming at first, it's this very letter that will be the key to unlocking the rest of my adventure. I show it off to my first new crewmates, who just kind of accept me as their captain, and find the pirate island of St. Anne, where I go off to the main kingpin who actually runs the island, and I'm able to go ahead and deliver the letter to him, being John Scurlock. Well, Scurlock isn't, all too happy about the British sinking his ship and me not doing much to help. He doesn't really care that much. And once I give him his letter, he sends me out on task to go ahead and do a little hunting of sharks, not ships. So, not the pirate life I was hoping for, but at least it's something. I go ahead and sink down a shark, and while I'm trying to catch more wood, I sink down another, and accidentally hit my own ship in the process because I forgot physics is a thing. But thankfully the ship and the game engine doesn't really care about that. I feel really bad for this guy. He probably wanted these trees, but, Minecraft rules, right? First come, first serve. Thankfully, I managed to get my first ship pretty quickly, just like I did back in the closed beta. And I go ahead and outfit it with cannons, since that's a lot better than sitting on a fishing ship with just a spear. There's a lot of customization options available, but frankly, I'm just happy to have a ship with actual sails, and not just a sinking tub on the water. With my ship set to sail, and my new sails actually set, I go ahead and look around the horizon, harvesting not only some bog iron, but I do a little failed sinking of this company ship. Apparently it's supposed to ram, but instead I settle for a little bit of a boarding action, pressing R once it's available, and actually get some pretty decent loot from a tier 1 level 1 ship. But I kind of hit the cliffs to make up for it. I sail out of the cliffs and find another of the company ships, which are all over the place, and this time I hit the rocks again and don't hit the ship. So I have to turn back around and do a complete loop-de-loop around in the ocean before I'm finally able to hit the enemy ship, and this time the ram actually works. I try to board it, but that doesn't work. So I go ahead and settle for just collecting his loot in high seas. Honestly, shout out to this guy who's really confident about shooting a ship that's way far ahead of him. And also, confidence in my part for trying to board a ship I wasn't actually able to board twice. But at least the third time tries, and I magically just teleport back to the ship and bring it towards me, even though I definitely was not near it. With all those company gathering ships successfully sank, and some successfully boarded, I go ahead and head back to St. Anne, and once I collect my loot for the quest, I go ahead and start day 2 of my pirate adventure. Day 2 is a little bit darker than day 1 was, and it's filled with a lot more clones of my ship, including this guy who almost clipped me. But to make up for it, I go ahead and take the spoils of his own victory and board a ship that I actually had no hand in sinking, which is very handy because the loot on this ship is pretty decent for a level 2 ship. I mean, it had 2 rows of loot I was able to get. Not too bad. There's another company ship in the distance, or not so distant, that I can help out. And I sink it and collect that loot too. And I really hope the other guy has his own loot to collect also. That'd be a little unfair. Back at St. Anne, the local dwellers managed to applaud me for doing the bare minimum of being a pirate and sinking ships. So, to reinforce their own low gravitas towards me, I head off to the cosmetic shop, where I, once again, just like the closed beta, spend almost all of my silver looking at all the cosmetics, including this really weird mask. I don't know why anyone who's not a cannibal would want to wear that mask. Since I'm not really a total pirate, I settle for a basic outfit and head back to Skurlock, where he sends me on another quest, same as before, to go ahead and deliver some weapons and info to the sea people. But since I'm not really doing that quest just yet, I check out my ship's customization, and turns out I can add this little lemur dude, or this dude who only wears a color maroon, or this cat. Since when do we get cats on this ship? And also cats with peg legs. I don't think this is like an OSHA approved work environment anymore. I mean, you know, not that it ever was. If you look at this, I mean, I have a whole ass lemur just hanging out with me, so I don't think OSHA would ever approve this to begin with. Now that I'm in my clearly not OSHA approved ship, I set back to sail to go ahead and get Skurlock's quest done, and find some loot on the high seas that no one collected, which is very convenient. Also, this random letter just hanging out in the ocean. Again, no idea where that came from. It's day 3, I think, in my pirate adventure, and I find Verona Falls, which is a really nice and quiet and serene little place where the sea people have taken up shore. I get a quest where it gives me a treasure map for the sea people, but I'm a lawyer and not a cartographer, so I have no idea how to read it. Instead, I settle for just kind of walking around aimlessly on the island and find this pirate bonfire, which gives my little ship crew a stamina boost. It's not too much, but it's enough. And once I'm done, I find some cannonballs. Or, well, bombard balls. Doesn't really help me, because I don't have a bombard. But it's alright, because later on I actually have cannonballs. Once I head back to the shore, I find my crewmates yet again, and I find this ship just kind of sailing into dock. So I go ahead and turn my way out of the way, find some more loot on the high seas, which is strange because I thought this would be a pirate game and that people would have already taken them. And I even pass some players as I'm going on my little quest. And speaking of little quests, you yourself can go on your own little quest. Even if it's not a pirate one. You can go ahead and subscribe, click the like button, and consider looking at all the other videos in the channel. In fact, there's actually this really cool thing where if I say hit the subscribe button, YouTube is supposed to highlight the sub button. You know, you should check that out. I'm gonna say it one more time. Hit the subscribe button. I have no idea if that works. Seriously, my editor told me about this like right before I was doing the voiceover. Is it gonna work? We'll find out. And if it doesn't, you can still subscribe anyway, and like the video, and stick around. It'll be a fun time, even if YouTube's system doesn't work, don't worry. I'll have plenty of more Skull and Bones content, and there's also plenty of others if you don't like Skull and Bones too. So once again, hit the subscribe button. I really hope that worked. On the next little step of my quest, I find another island called Lanitria. Lanitra? I'm not really sure how to pronounce it, but it's another little island that's not as peaceful or fun, considering I'm given quests to hunt wildlife and find some random abandoned star charts on the seas. So since the star charts are close by, I figure I'd go ahead and start with that first. Also, it's very strange that there's a bunch of enemy ships surrounding the port of their enemy and doing nothing. In the distance, I find something that I didn't actually find during the closed beta, which is a Sea People merchant ship off in the distance that apparently needs help. I'm told that since there's valuable cargo on board, if I manage to defend the ship, they'll give me some special loot in response to it. And I figure that these giant shining ships in the distance are the enemies I'm supposed to defend them from. At first it goes pretty well. I'm able to use my bracing actions to my best ability, and one of the 2 ships I'm able to sink fairly quickly. But unfortunately, in my journey to board one of the enemy ships that I sank to collect their loot, I completely forget about the merchant ship that I'm supposed to protect. So while it's pretty cool that I managed to get some bonus loot on board this ship, I don't really succeed in my mission in a literal way. So I settle for the Partitioner's Prize and sink the other enemy ship that was attacking the one that made me lose the quest. Which, if we're being honest, actually wasn't that bad of a trade. I mean, the ship surprisingly had some pretty good loot. So I took some damage in that battle, I go ahead and use a repair kit, and since I somehow still need those star charts, I go ahead and sink a few more of those wrecks around to go ahead and find them. I go ahead and use my cannons and get some little practice shots in as I go ahead and fire on them. And eventually, I sink enough wrecks to get all the star charts that I would need. So I turn tail and run, or sail, to the place where I need to go to be able to drop them off. But not before taking a little pit stop off at St. Anne first. I'm actually on dry land. I go ahead and head to the blacksmith, where I sell off all that loot and goodies I got during sinking those 2 ships. It was surprisingly a lot. I'm actually pretty glad I did it. In the distance, I head to the refinery, since I figure eventually I am going to need to offer the services of the refiner to get higher upgraded materials for even higher upgraded ships. But I don't actually have any materials to offer. In fact, all I have is this ship and a little fishing ship. You know what? I figure now is the best time, more than anything else, go ahead and try out that little fishing ship. I mean, after all, I technically do have a quest that I need to accomplish, where I have to go ahead and hunt down specific wildlife animals and collect trophies. So while my little fishing dhow might not be my favorite ship, it is the ship I need to work. Though it sucks that this ship is pretty small compared to all the other ones. I end up going to one of the nearby quest markers that I need to hunt down the wildlife, but going at a total of like 3 knots per hour with the wind directly in my face isn't really that fun. But to make up for it, I go ahead and loot one of these shipwrecks nearby and get some kind of basic but somewhat good loot. One of the animals I need to hunt to satisfy the quest is this random hippo, which, to be honest, you'd be actually surprised at how long it took me to find this guy. Oh, he gets done with pretty easy, and I'm actually a little surprised at how quickly this was. It's kind of anticlimactic now that I think about it. So to try to make up for that anticlimactic fight, I settle for another fight, which, as you can imagine, after I shoot a few missed out spears, it's not really that satisfying anymore. I don't even need to hunt 2 hippos, I only needed to hunt 1, but for some reason I thought this would give me satisfaction, and it really didn't. In fact, hunting all these sharks while I was on my way to the next quest marker didn't really give me any satisfaction either. But the quest at this point was 2/3 done, so I figured it was ultimately alright. I sail into the final area I need to hunt down and finish that wildlife quest, which requires me to go ahead and hunt down what's called a Nile crocodile. Now, I figured since there were a bunch of friendly birds just kind of flying around in the distance, this battle can't be too hard, especially since the other 2 were pretty easy. And my god, I could not have been more wrong. This crocodile somehow does half health to my ship in a single hit, meaning that after 2 hits from this, I'm blown to smithereens. Or, well, at least sunk to smithereens. I guess not blown, since there were no cannons. Now that my ship just casually sank due to a crocodile, which might be the weirdest end to a pirate's journey ever, I go ahead and spend some silver to spawn right back there, and head back to collect my loot, where I go ahead and sail at the almost absolute top speed possible to get as far away from this crocodile as possible, and I sail the seas all the way there. In fact, I have so much loot burdening down my hull that I'm going at 3 knots per hour and can't even use a high speed setting. But eventually, thankfully, I make it to the pirate island of St. Anne. And while the video might end here, my pirate adventure sure won't. So stay tuned for more pirate adventures in Skull and Bones Open Beta. I mean, really, I love this game. There's gonna be a lot of content for this. Seriously. The Skull and Bones Open Beta is here. Or, at least, it was here. As of recording this and uploading, the open beta isn't running anymore. But the game is almost out, which is good. Up until this point, in both the closed beta and the open one that was just running, I've been doing all the traditional things that a pirate does. I've been sailing the seas and shooting down ships for their loot. But I decided that this time around, since there's no time limit, I wanted to do other things in Skull and Bones. I wanted to go treasure hunting. I wanted to go around exploring islands, seeing what kind of loot you can find on the islands. And if I could not only be a part-time pirate, but also a part-time treasure hunter and balancing law school. So maybe I can take on all 3 jobs in this video. I know I can do 2 of them, so let's see about the 3rd one. And I'm not going to tell you which one I'm not doing right now. But before I can set sail on some islands for treasure, I have to go back to St. Anne, where I'm greeted by a cheering crowd, which I'm pretty sure are the same people who were actually yelling at me when I first landed at St. Anne. I look at the carpenter to see if I can upgrade my tools, but I can't. So, since there's nothing St. Anne can offer me, it's time to head back onto the high seas. The first time I go onto the seas, it's pretty peaceful, since leaving St. Anne. Oof. And there's a small little battle in the distance around the giant sleep region, which is always happening. So, I take a picture for posterity. Although this might be the most uneven battle in the world. It's like 4 ships against 1. I don't even know how it's allowed. I sail through the little narrow straits, and I find a copy of my ship in the distance, who's plundering this fort, and also just hanging out with me, with that guy ahead of me. You know, there's a lot of ships like mine. I should probably get a new one. I come across an abandoned island, or at least an undiscovered one. One of the same ones I explored back in the closed beta, way back when. I pick up a leaflet, which is just a little bit of lore, and I take on a quest. For the first time, doing something that's not pirate related. Heading deeper into the actual island itself, I find a trader who doesn't have a whole lot to offer, although she's really enthusiastic about meeting again. I mean, maybe I'll come for that shark. Who knows? I completely forgot that I actually had armor to equip with my ship, so even though this is an abandoned island with no dockyard, I'm somehow able to equip it, and I set back on the sails, finding one of the guard towers that thankfully is not hostile, and finding a hidden waterfall cave, but with no loot, so that's disappointing. In fact, now that I think about it, I wonder if this entire swamp is like Shrek's in the movie. I mean, there's nothing here, so it might make sense. Once I leave Shrek's swamp and I go out into the actual open seas, I find an enemy company ship that I need to take down for a quest. He attempts to ram me, but doesn't really work out for him, and I hit the weak spots of those little red parts just in time to board him. And wow, those are some really long hooks. Stretchy too. The boarding actually gets me some decent bonus loot, and I'm really grateful that French warship in the distance very casually did not see me do that. I don't even want to know what would have happened if he had spotted me. But you know what, who cares? I shoot him down anyway. In fact, he's a lot easier of a hit than I thought he'd be. I mean, that one ram took him down so much I was able to board him in one shot. And when I board him, I get even more bonus loot, including some tobacco and a little bit more silver, which, as you can see, I pretty desperately need, you know, for clothing. I don't know how in every single one of these episodes I always keep ending back at the cosmetic shop and spending like all my silver there. I mean, realistically, where am I even storing all these clothes? And that just removes everything. Yep, I never was one for tattoos. So, I don't think that's a right fit for me. Get it fit? I actually just thought of that as I was recording this, that's funny. Once I'm in some new digs, I go back on the docks, so the Red Isle, and find those same people there. Honestly, this is a great catwalk. If there was like a pirate fashion show, I think I'd do great. Once I'm back on board, I go ahead and equip some new cannons onto my ship, which I've upgraded from the previous ship to a new one, called the Hulk. Once I put all my furniture on there and deck out my sails with some brand new stuff, and realize I have no new ship wheels, I head back to St. Anne, because I kind of forgot something. You know, the person who actually runs this place. Hey, even he notices I have a new ship. That's pretty cool, actually. That's a neat feature with this game. I accept a new contract from Skurlog and head over to the bounty board, where I accept quests that I definitely cannot take on at this point. They have some decent loot, but I can't take on those boss ships yet. I take on a few smuggling jobs instead, which are much easier for me, and head out to do just that. Set on the high seas and smuggle. Kind of, if the ship would go any faster. Once we're near one of the French ports, I find that they have the items I'm looking for, specifically some French ale. And taking out a few ships aren't bad, but the big problem is this is right next to a French fort, so I'm not exactly afforded the great opportunities I would be normally, and I miss all those hooks and hit an island. This fort raid is not exactly going the way I thought it would, although those stretchy hooks help me out once again, and get some more bonus loot. Whoever is my hook guy, I should pay him more, because wow, they are really stretchy. With those ships out of the way, I go ahead and start plundering the fort of Giron, where I actually have no idea how to raid a fort, and it shoots up a flare. What that does, I have no idea. I kind of figure shooting at it would help the progression of the plundering go along, but I don't think it actually does anything. If anything, all it does is attract more enemy ships to me. But I'm getting pretty handy at plundering and hitting these enemy ships head on, and less so actually getting some successful hooks on them. So I just sink this guy instead, and this guy. 2 for 2. Once I clear out all the enemy ships, the progression bar for this plundering raid continues on, and I fire a few shots right into that house, which is conveniently cannon-proof. Unlike this ship, I'm really glad the ships aren't cannon-proof, because that'd be very awkward. I actually love that, like, these ships are doing little drive-bys, and they're all failing. Luckily, the plunder is eventually completed, and once I loot the little boat out in the sea, my crew takes everything that Giron was worked for, including this random barrel or box of bottles. I didn't know they had. Once I've acquired all the ale I need, and a lot more than I could ever want, I go ahead and set sail for another settlement off in the distance, the Fonderie Royale. But this one's a little bit more powerful for my taste than I would have liked, so instead of plundering it, I just look at my spyglass and say what's up. Ooh, cool little cross too. I like that they actually decked the place out. That's nice of them. A lot better than get around. In fact, they even have a guard tower in here. It's even cooler. Since I have nothing else of worth out of these French ships and French ports, I head out back to St. Anne and casually smack myself right into another island. And also, there's a neat little stone arch. Actually, a really cool screenshot. I find myself back where Barack O'Brien is apparently a pirate, and find myself back in my little cheering crowd back at St. Anne. And Skurlock is even cheering me on too, telling me that the French are gonna start fearing me, so long as they don't see me smashing into islands. I somehow fail a contract that I never actually attempted and can take it back up again, which is great, I guess no punishment for failure. And I zoom back out to the map to see my next target, and head back on board my ship, ready to set sail again. Where I find these two dudes just kind of looking at each other, assuming they're in like a squad together. It'd be weird if they're not. I pass by a destroyed fort, I think, and find a bunch of fire ships that are already damaged themselves. I don't know what kind of fight they got themselves into. I'm not really going to complain though, because that just makes my life even easier. And even though the wind is directly in the face of my sails, luckily my cannons don't really care about where the wind is. So I'm able to shoot down the ship to my side, while the ships all around me are already at pretty damaged health. Even though this ship is really high up, I'm somehow able to hit it, I think. Maybe. Let's go around for another one. See if my stretchy hooks can win us another victory. Oh, they popped a flare, never mind. Why are there flares in this game? What is this, Rainbow Six Siege? Rather than boarding that vessel and keep trying unsuccessfully, I decide just to sink it. Although that problem with that flare, which for some reason the Far has, means it just attracts even more ships. And at this point I'm fighting like a 1v6 in the high seas. A little bit of a ram on this ship and throwing some fireballs or Molotov cocktails right at him, explodes in a fiery burst and does no damage to my ship, which is very surprising. At this point I think I'm fighting the entire Far fleet and casually hit this Sea People ship, which it did not want. This guy is even trying to ram me, and at the exact last second, I managed to shoot him down. The irony is I don't actually need to fight this Sea People ship, kind of just got caught in the crossfire. So instead of doing that, I attacked this other ship instead. And speaking of attacking, you can consider attacking, in a friendly way, the subscribe button down below. Last time I said that if you say the phrase, hit the subscribe button, apparently it's supposed to like light up or do something. I don't know. I didn't actually bother to check, so let's do it again. Hit the subscribe button. And also consider liking this video and checking out everything else in the channel. As you can see, if you're here, or if you're new, I absolutely love Skull and Bones, and I think this is like my 5th or 6th video I've put out in it. So if you like Skull and Bones, hang out in the channel, hit that subscribe button, and see all the other Skull and Bones videos I have. Or if you don't like Skull and Bones, there's plenty of non-Skull and Bones content out there that could use your view. So, once again, like this video, hit that subscribe button, and stick around. Let's see if that subscribe button thing actually worked. Unlike, you know, me hitting all these islands on my ship. Once we're headed back into the Far fleet battle, which is somehow still raging on, I'm able to once again attack another ship, bringing it down to exploding smithereens. And again, I'm really surprised that somehow none of this damages my ship. I feel like a ship absolutely blowing the f up next to me should do something. But once I battle like half the Far fleet and head back to St. Anne, I go ahead and craft some new cannons at the blacksmith, which are just an upgraded version of the ones I already have. But every little bit of firepower could help, as we obviously saw from that giant fleet battle that started with like 2 ships went to 7. I go ahead and land on a nearby island, which is apparently a sunken gold mine, and I head all the way up to the very top of the island where I pick up a letter detailing something about hidden relics on this island. Maybe now is the time where I can finally transfer from being a pirate to a treasure hunter. I see that there's a rope, but apparently I lack the upper body strength to climb up it, so instead I'm forced to walk around inside the camp. The Ungwana leader doesn't really have too much for me except for a little bit of lime, and also these ornate pistols just lying around for me to take, and apparently no one cares that I take them, or that I'm taking a screenshot of this amazing view. I mean, god, this island is actually pretty beautiful. This guy apparently has a problem with the fact that I have a new face, I think. And I head up to find a pirate bonfire at the very top of the island, which I actually found, conveniently, back in the closed beta too. And a thumbnail about it also. I go ahead and throw some powder into there, which gives me extra stamina regeneration for about 20 minutes once I leave the island. And I open up the cache on the island, which just kind of serves like a mobile warehouse. Amazing that they're bringing like 2 tons of equipment just on every island. That's pretty cool. Also, more nice scenery. As I'm sailing out of the bay of that cool little island, I come across a bunch of like little atolls or islands that I can't really land on, but are pretty interesting, so I can navigate around them. and kind of see what's on them, including that little tower in the distance, and an entire Nguana settlement called Bandari. Find a trade route, but not exactly in a plundering mood, so I head around that island and instead find what's apparently a poacher's island, and I don't know what I just hit. While I'm on side this island called the Poacher's Cache, I'm able to dig up my first treasure chest, considering I was actually looking at my map this whole time and knew there was a treasure here. So, for the first time outside of a quest mission, I managed to magically have this chest appear from the ground and dig with my hands like this is like Minecraft. And open up the chest to find a lot of silver, some equipment, and a giant ship hull. I would love to see the guy who managed to put a giant ship hull in a treasure chest that size. I find another pirate bonfire to really double down on the stamina regeneration in my crew, and to celebrate the fact that they're going to be carrying an entire ship hull in my ship's hull. I don't even know how that works. Once I head further up on the island, I pick up a newspaper that they have for some reason, which is just complaining about the fact that the pirates are hanging around in the East Indies. As if I didn't know that already. There's a compagnie officer on the island itself, who his actual label says he's corrupt, which makes sense because he's selling French pistols to a pirate. So I go ahead and buy all the loot and goodies he has, and embark off this island, which was very profitable. And I can go ahead and add Treasure Hunter to my resume now. As I'm leaving, for some reason, I think it's a good idea to fight this massive French warship, and wow, it's really not. I have to spend like 10 minutes or so looping and kiting around this French warship as he just fires mortars off the sides of my ship. And what's even worse is I can't even get within range to board him. So I'm forced to sink him and miss out on that bonus loot. I'm across the nearby island of Fort Louis, where I find another corrupt compagnie officer. It's incredible that just like those little caches on each island, there's a corrupt officer on each one too. I find a merchant ship that apparently is asking for an escort to one of the lumber yards that's nearby St. Anne, and it helps me out since I'm going that direction anyway. There are some enemy privateers who end up attacking the enemy ship, but I'm able to successfully divert them away, and I'm even able to board an enemy pirate ship itself, which is interesting. Although the game complains that apparently I'm protecting the merchant too well, and that I'm out of range, almost like this is an Assassin's Creed mission. Shout out if you guys remember those missions. I hated them. I completely forget that the clan of Farah is kind of hostile to the sea people, and kind of let the merchant ship get destroyed. So, while I don't get all my silver and loot from that, at least I can get a little bit of loot from destroying this Farah ship. Not as much, but I think it's fair compensation, considering they're the ones who maybe missed out on all that loot to begin with. Now he can know what it's like to get destroyed. There are two more Farah ships and this company ship hanging out. Didn't know they were friends. And this time my stretchy hooks aren't enough. So I decided to let that ship be, considering I have like 2 and 3 skulls of danger on my front, what the hell am I saying? On my UI, and I head back to the high seas, where I need to get some more equipment to satisfy a contract for St. Anne, called Supply and Demand, which is very fitting, being a pirate, but the seas themselves in this specific part are pretty foggy. So once I've gotten all my loot, I head back to St. Anne, get into first person, and dock to safety. I'm really glad that my little lemur friend was with me throughout all of these attacks, and showing off my rings. What is this, the Super Bowl? As a little bit of flamingos fly over the main mast of my ship, I land back, say hello to my little cheering section at the front, and I can cross off Treasure Hunter on my resume again. Pirates plunder. They can sail the seas. They can loot ships, both in real life and in Skull and Bones. But did you know they also make great private investigators? At least in Skull and Bones. Probably not in real life. Now you see, up until this point, if you've seen all the previous Skull and Bones videos, and if you haven't, go check them out, I've done all the traditional pirate things you can do in Skull and Bones. So I decided to try my hand at a new mission type in the game, called Investigations. Now you see, investigations are a series or a string of quests that send you off to various islands, uncovering a mystery that's been plaguing the inhabitants of the Indian Ocean for centuries. And so, I decided to do just that. Go off on my own adventure and follow one of those quests to completely finish and uncover an investigation. So, not only can I add pirate to my resume, but I can now also add private investigator, at least in game. But before I can actually get to that promotion, I have to fix up my ship first. All my previous battles have beaten down the hull just a little bit, and since I've got new upgraded cannons I can add, I go ahead and add them. After all, I'm gonna need the firepower if I'm gonna be uncovering hidden secrets and mysteries all across the Indian Ocean. Plus, why not make my ship look nice in the process? And my crewmates too, but I don't think they'll like those outfits too much. Once my ship is actually decked out and ready, I pick up the investigation to begin with, called The Fall of Lenitria. Now this quest actually sends me off to an island I've already been to before, the ruins of Lenitria. Apparently Lenitria was a ruined island that used to be a pirate haven, but at some point was betrayed and destroyed by the British. So I set sail in my dhow, and on my way to Lenitria, go ahead and pick off a few animals. After all, I do still have a quest that requires me to pick off some wildlife and hand it in for a reward, so why not go ahead and kill 2 birds with 1 stone? Or 2 sharks with 1 spear, I guess. Although, I definitely use more than 1 spear, as you can clearly see. Also, that's a crocodile, not a shark. I'm a little bit ways away from the place I need to be at over at the Isle of Lenitria, but that's just fine, because I have plenty of provisions and food to be able to get away. Or, ships like this can just get out of my way, which also helps out. And I'm really glad I'm not on that ship. Great shot, and I'm glad I'm not involved in it. In fact, even that guy doesn't want to be involved in it. He's sailing away. With all the wildlife I need successfully hunted, I head back to St. Anne and go ahead and cook up some shark meat, since I'm gonna need all the food and provisions I can get if I'm heading all the way out to the ruins of Lenitria and plan on solving this mystery. I go ahead and swap back into my actual ship this time and set a marker over for a nearby sea people settlement on my way over to Lenitria. There, once I interact with Palisade Bay, which thankfully I'm at peace with, I can finally give in the quest for all of those animals I was able to kill, and get a little bit of loot in the process, before finally landing at the ruins of Lenitria. Now, the ruins themselves are really ruined. There's skeletons hanging from old ships, and a rope just hanging here, which I can do a sick little trick down while I fail a contract that I didn't know I had. Now, once I get on the isle, I somehow come across a newspaper that's in perfect condition that no one else somehow noticed, in which, after I start to read the newspaper, sends me off to the French island of Guérande, again, which I went to last time. So I throw some powder into the pirate's bonfire to get a stamina boost for my ship, since I'm gonna need it, especially if I'm gonna be raiding a fort. Once I get to Guérande, which ironically I actually set fire to in the last episode, there's all those French ships back in port just hanging out. And they are not gonna be hanging out for long. Once I fire off an opening salvo, I decide to ram the ship since they were just kind of sitting there and doing nothing, and it's pretty easy for my little elastic hooks to sink right into them. I go ahead and knock out 2 more of these French merchant ships that are just kind of hanging out before finally plundering Guérande. Now you see, I need to plunder Guérande because apparently the investigation says that Skurlock was hanging out at Lenitria at the time of its collapse, and that only Guérande has the information I would need. So, time to raid them down for it, and raid this ship down for it, even though I have no need for it. In fact, on the bright side, it isn't actually an allied pirate that's helping me raid the fort of Guérande, even though I don't think he gets anything out of it. So, while my pirates go ahead and find a crate full of different beers and bring that aboard, I get to have my own little quest satisfied, and get the letter that I needed from Guérande. Once I land back in the Red Isle, I go ahead and pick up another job at the recent job board, which is to supply coconuts to the person directly above, which I guess is an easy 900 silver, so I can't really complain too much. Stupid quest, but hey, it got me to break it, which is the infamy limit actually for the open beta, which thankfully doesn't apply anymore because the full game is now out. And you see, actually once I got to that level, I was able to unlock some of the endgame content for Skull and Bones, being an organization called Taking the Helm. Now you see, this quest actually leads me to the Helm, which is the organization proper. And once I receive the quest and move forward with it, I go into the back room of St. Anne, where I uncover an entire operation that apparently has been going on behind the scenes this entire time. When they said there was endgame content, I didn't think they meant it was literally at the end of the bar in St. Anne. Going around, part of this endgame content means I get to go ahead and make rum, which I can sell for a profit or a special currency called the Helm tokens. But before I can do any of that, I actually have to get the ingredients to make the rum to begin with, which means getting sugarcane, which also means sailing almost 15,000 miles in a different direction, because since I'm now going on dangerous smuggling operations, I figure I need a better ship, which I can only get if I travel to an island that's 15,000 miles away. Thankfully, the journey itself is actually not too bad. Along the way, I actually find a Dutch fort and settlement, which is a first for the open beta and my entire Skull and Bones adventure. But it's a little overleveled for me, and I can't really get anything out of it. So, I finally land 15,000 miles later on the exact island I need to go on to get the blueprints for an upgraded ship. Once I go ahead and go to the shipwright of this island, which is pretty close to the one in St. Anne, I'm able to go ahead and pick up some ingredients I'm going to need in order to get the new ship, which is called the Padawakang, I think. But I decided that a new ship isn't the only thing I want. After all, the clothes make a captain. So I head over to the cosmetics shop that's also on this island, just like St. Anne, and decide to go ahead and pick up some new clothes for myself. If I'm gonna get a new upgraded ship, I might as well look the part. As always, I kinda go for a generic jacket look, but get a nice little bigger hat. Because bigger hat says bigger man, right? And I go ahead and strut my stuff directly out of the cosmetics shop, and right back to the harbor. It's nighttime by the time I get to the harbor, so wow, I really spent a lot of time in that cosmetics shop. And once I'm there, apparently a death mark was on me and expired twice. It was great. Once the death mark message goes away, I go ahead and find a ship that I actually need in order to get those supplies for the new upgraded ship. And along the way, there are even the trees I need to make those planks. So, all in all, things are looking pretty great. And in fact, in the distance, there are two enemy ships that are attacking each other, and ironically, I need both of them to plunder their loot to be able to get the ingredients for the ship. So it's just a happy coincidence that they both go down right in the sea and I get all of their loot. In the distance, rather than fighting this entire settlement for the resources I would need to craft the ship, I go ahead and buy them while another settlement and tower fires away at me. An allied pirate tries to help me out, but it doesn't really work out all that well. It's kind of unfortunate that that ship NPC took the exact same tactic I've used on ships previously in this game, and even that ship blows up in the end anyway, so all is fair, unlike that ship, who blows up anyway. And speaking of blowing up, you too can go ahead and help my channel blow up by hitting that subscribe button below, liking the video, and maybe checking out a bunch of the other videos that I posted on the channel. In fact, the last Skull and Bones videos, in fact the last few of them, I got a lot of support from you guys, which I really appreciate, and encourages me to go ahead and make more content. It's nice to know that people are actually watching these things. So, if you actually like this video, and you're new to the channel, once again, hit that subscribe button, and like the video. It really does help out, and it's nice to see that the channel does kind of grow, and that people enjoy the content. Both long-time users of the channel, or even if you're new and this video just randomly popped up in your suggested feed. In which case, hey, what's up? And thanks for staying as long as you have. It takes a lot of effort, actually, to last like 11 minutes into a video. So, thanks. So, once I go ahead and blow up, but thankfully respawn at the cost of a little bit of silver, I land on a nearby island, where this French company officer is around. So I go ahead and throw some dust in my eyes to forget I ever saw him. I mean, he's not really doing anything for me anyway. In fact, the guy down below on the shore is giving me more information and more equipment by giving me a Torpedo 2 blueprint and a bunch of different ammunition crates. So, since this island is a bit of a bust and isn't really helping me out when crafting my new ship, I decided to set sail for another one, where there's an enemy ship nearby that I do actually need in order to craft more equipment for that ship. But unfortunately, he's a lot more powerful than I was hoping he would be. And in fact, to be fair, at this point, I'm also still running like one of the beginner ships, so kinda makes sense that I'm not going toe-to-toe with this guy. Or this guy, who's like GTA style, just like ramming my ship. Thankfully I learned from last time and actually braced it this time. Now, the biggest problem here comes not only in these ships just like harassing me and constantly bumping right into me, but that giant ship in the background that is borderline invincible. Now you see, a ship like that is called a privateer, which apparently in Skull and Bones are the sworn enemy of pirates, and are specifically designed to hunt them down, and be almost like boss fights in their own right. So, since I don't really have much of a chance of fighting down that privateer, I go for the easier bait, and sink that ship, which to be fair also has the exact kind of equipment that I need to begin with to craft my ship, so it all works out. Once I head back to the safety of one of the islands, it has one of those endgame content rooms once again, which serves as my office. So, after I bow out, and after a very long journey back to the Red Isle, I finally end up back home, where I finally craft that new ship I had always wanted, which is pretty cool. I mean, you know, it has 2 sails just like the last one, but it's just as cool. And to test it out, I go ahead and take on one of the boss ships that I said I wasn't going to do earlier. Now you see, this ship in particular is an actual contract you can take out for it, being a Farah admiral that apparently has been wreaking absolute havoc on the sea people. Although I can't imagine how they are, considering they comically fire off their cannons one by one, and all I'm doing is bracing to take no damage. In fact, their ship is so comical, my crew is like lobbing Molotov cocktails directly at them and slowly just whittling down their health. All of these little red points on the side of the ship represent critical hit points, where if you hit them, it does a lot of damage. And I'm slowly destroying this boss ship one flag at a time. And even though they call for reinforcements and additional fire warships arrive, even that's not enough to stop me. Somehow I'm actually able to board the boss ship, which is really cool, and I wish I could get more out of it, like the ship itself, but I settled for getting that person's head, apparently, and collect a bunch of loot and a treasure chest in the process. And so, to celebrate my victory, I head to an island called the Mother of Shipwrecks, where I appreciate that I'm not one of them. In fact, one of the contracts on this mission allows me to complete it right then and there. So, I send in the loot I was supposed to, and collect a little bit of silver and some goodies on the side. There's another corrupt compagnie officer, at which point I wonder if there's any, like, actual legitimate ones, and set sail once I collect a quest from him. Now you see, once I'm finally back on the endgame content quest, I land on an island that is really Shrek Swamp this time, but also it serves a practical matter of helping me advance that endgame quest. Now you see, this quest allows me to finally buy sugarcane, which I can later use in a future video to go ahead and craft and produce more White Skull rum, which is a special endgame product you can use to trade around for smuggling missions and then get special premium endgame currency that you can only get through those missions. While on a regular mission though, to deliver some ale to Fort Louis, which is nearby, I go ahead and collect it from my cache that's just hanging out on the beach again, and I go ahead and set sail once more, this time with all that sugarcane I was supposed to buy, and a little bit of ale alongside too, which, as far as I'm concerned, not only makes for a good pirate life, but it makes for a good life too. So, if you like this adventure, just like my own pirate, crack open a keg of ale, and have some fun.